Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Ali Rizvi, CEO and founder at TrueRev. Ali, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, great to have you here. And I think we met, is this right? I think pre-pandemic at SaaStr or SaaStr adjacent. So it's been a while since we first met in person. So happy to have you on the show. Excited to have you on the show. So let's kick this off. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, my background is finance, finance and accounting. And I remember when we met, it was pre-pandemic. It was outside at SaaStr. I think that was one of the first times we were attending. But yeah, so background wise, I started my career at Ernst & Young. I'm still a CPA, but it was really kind of on the audit side, primarily in software. But since then, I've had a bunch of different roles as a controller, as a VP finance, and most recently as a CFO for a bunch of early stage, primarily SaaS companies, technology companies, primarily SaaS. And then a lot of that experience ultimately just brought me to founding TrueRev, which was a few years back now.
Okay. All right. So we have similar backgrounds. Now, I wasn't in audit or public accounting, but the CFO track at software companies. So yeah, very similar backgrounds. So tell us, all right, so let's talk about TrueRev. Tell us about the products and or services that TrueRev offers.
Yeah, let's do that. Just a quick sort of not necessarily aside, but related. As I was working sort of through the audit side of the equation, getting really kind of in-depth look at financial operations for a bunch of companies. A lot of them were early stage companies. Many of them were publicly traded companies. And there was this kind of ongoing issue around, reconciling what companies sold, how they build it, and then how they recognize the revenue. And, we'd always find issues from an audit standpoint. And then when I was working as a CFO and controller, I was seeing that at companies where I spent a lot of time just trying to get the revenue, the most important number on anyone's books is revenue. It's, how much did we recognize? What did we show to our investors? All that stuff. Just the things that it impacts is significant, right? It impacts your valuation of your company. It impacts commissions that salespeople are going to get paid. It just impacts so many things. And it was always a problem, like at every company of every stage. So we leaned in heavily and I leaned in heavily towards the companies with a recurring revenue model. And what led me to, found TrueRev was just to try and solve that problem, primarily in the SMB space. That's where we saw that there was a need that was significant. It was primarily in companies that didn't have the headcount or they didn't have the dollars to throw at solving this problem. It was just an ongoing problem, and they solved it through spreadsheets and just hacking systems and stuff. But so that's why we found it. We're really, the goal for us is just to solve the financial chaos at SaaS companies, right? Like you've got all these different disconnected systems and everyone has their own source of what they think is the truth. And, we really believe at TrueRev that the truth lies with finance and accounting. That's ultimately, it's tied to billings. And anyway, so we're solving that problem for SaaS companies.
Yeah. And that, with your background and helping SaaS companies and audit and all that, so, those billings, the rev rec issues. So that makes sense. So really, would you classify your software as well, I kind of call it subscription management software. Is that fair, or would you call it a different category?
I think it's, yeah, I think the space is still trying to come up with a name for what it is. It's certainly a subscription management because most of our customers sell subscriptions, and so it's subscription management. Along with that comes revenue management because there are ultimately what comes out of a customer contract from a reporting standpoint is going to be revenue reporting. Whether it's recurring revenue in the form of ARR, MRR, or whether it's GAAP revenue in the form of how much do you recognize any given month, et cetera. So I think it's a combination of revenue management, subscription management tied into one solution. And then invariably there's billing. So it's the way we look at it kind of internally is bookings, billings, revenue, and then all of the things that are tied together around that.
Yeah, I like that. So really, it's kind of that SaaS revenue cycle of the bookings. You execute the contract with your customer. Now you've got to bill or invoice them. Now you've got to deal with the revenue management. And yeah, I call subscription management invoicing, rev management, reporting, maybe some KPIs. And so your focus, your ICP, it sounds like SaaS companies, recurring revenue businesses. Do you stray outside of SaaS to other recurring revenue, or is your focus primarily SaaS?
It's primarily SaaS. We have some companies that are, that run campaigns. They're not SaaS in the traditional sense that they have an ongoing recurring revenue stream, but they sell recurring products. So we have some of those, but that's probably less than 10% of our business. Most of our business is primarily SaaS. And we do have companies that sell SaaS that's connected to hardware. So there's that absolutely where they sell you a piece of hardware, and then there's a recurring components of software that's sold on top of that. But there's this theme of recurring. That's
Yeah, so recurring, so SaaS, tech companies. And then do you have a sweet spot as far as the size of the companies who are signing up with you?
Yeah, we do. It's interesting. We have a large range of our customers, some of them doing under $1 million in ARR, and, some of our largest ones are over 100 million. But our sweet spot are companies that I would say where recurring revenue is becoming a problem, recurring billing is becoming a problem, contract renewals and management is becoming a problem. And it tends to be where the number of contracts is over 10, but the revenue rate could be anywhere from $1 million up to like 50 million. And where we really shine are companies between 5 and 10 million, where they've got some growth spurts that are happening, and the people that are at the company just don't have the time or the tools to help them.
And then, so invoicing, RevRec, renewals, and then tell us about your integrations. I know you integrate to QuickBooks Online. Other integrations, or is that your focus?
So we started the app with a tight focus around QuickBooks, two-way integration there. QuickBooks doesn't have a solution that solves for this. It wasn't designed for it. So that's the early bet we've made. But we have other integrations coming. We've been thinking about some of the other SMB solutions that, we've been asked about from prospects. For example, just other ERP solutions like Intact and NetSuite, which is, for us, it's potentially a natural path to move in that direction. But QuickBooks has a very large market and a very significant need. So those are the primary ERP integrations. And then there's the other side of the equation, which is the CRMs like Salesforce and HubSpot.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm actually releasing my sixth annual Tech Stack survey tomorrow. And again, 6 years in a row, top 4 accounting players and SaaS companies, NetSuite, Sage, Xero, QBO, not necessarily in that order, but kind of what I think. SMB accounting, Xero, QBO. And it seems like in the US, QBO focus, outside of US, a lot of Xero, and then of course the ERP, Sage, and NetSuite battling that out.
Yeah. I think we'll live it within that ecosystem.
Yeah. And do you see now, I don't know when it was, a year ago now, that QBO announced their own, kind of revenue management, RevRec module. How have you seen that play within your customer base or when talking to prospects? Is that a competitor at all, or is that just too light of a solution to be a serious contender?
How we solve for RevRec at the moment, it's light. I mean, it's Intuit though, right? It's a large company. If they decide to throw a bunch of dev dollars at it, they can probably solve for it. But I've had some conversations with some folks at Intuit. It seems like they're still on this, and maybe it's going to change, but it's on this sort of approach where they still are a platform, and the good third-party tools that can connect to their platform to make it really a true robust ERP seems to be strategically where they're going. But it is light. We've had some prospects that have come from using QuickBooks, their RevRec module, and it didn't work for them. So they came to us. So we see that happen a lot. We've never yet lost a customer who said, look, I want to go there. So that hasn't happened, but you never know what could happen in the future. But
always changing. We'll talk a little bit about the space towards that maybe, but let's talk some stats and figures. So what year did you found TrueRev?
We've been at it for a while, but I found it as it was a side project kind of. I was working on a revenue recognition project actually for a large, well-known company that's a unicorn now, and we were solving their RevRec problem. And I started it then trying to solve for my own problem, to be honest. And so it started as a side project, never really got really, really serious until about 2018, 19, where I started building out the prototype with a co-founder. And when I look at launch, when we had enough capability in the application where it was benefiting customers kind of on a whole scale basis, I would say it was the end of 2022, October 2022 is what I'd say. You never really know when actual launches, but I would say if that if I was to define it, I'd probably say around October 2022.
Okay, so started side project, couple years, and then 2022 getting serious, getting out to the market. So, and then do you have a headquarters location, or are you guys virtual?
We don't. We're all remote. I mean, I'm in California, just here in the Bay Area. We've got members of our team that in Washington State, North Carolina, Illinois. We've got some developers that are in Europe, so it's kind of all over the place.
Okay, and what's your current team size?
We're still small, very nimble. We're just around 10 people at the moment. Yeah.
All right. And anything you want to share about scale or revenue ranges, ARR ranges?
We don't share our ARR at the moment, but we're growing. We've been growing obviously since 2022, which were very, very small, but we've been growing relatively rapidly. And I think what's helping us is just at least what we hear from our customers, that it's easy to get up and running, and it's really easy to use. I mean, if there's something that we hear all the time is you built a really intuitive application.
Yeah,
I think that's been helping.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because I was just talking to, I had a coaching client, and they were looking at different subscription management systems and looking at one, and they're like, that was the worries, like implementation seems long, seems hairy. So yeah, that can make, as we all know in the software world, implementations can make or break, whether they get up and running. So, and then tell us, so targeting for now, say QBO users, integrating the QuickBooks Online. And so how are you finding your prospects right now? Tell us a little bit about your go-to-market.
Yeah. I mean, our go-to-market is, we're really sort of, we've got some great conversion metrics, so when we have customers that come to us, they find us, whether it's through the marketplace that we're on or marketplaces that we're on now, or general search, when they find us, our conversion metrics are really, really good. So we think we want to continue down that path, because it's just a better, efficient selling process, and it helps us support our CAC. So our go-to-market really is, it's on inbound strategies. It's content that speaks to the pain points of accounting managers, sales ops leaders, CFOs, founders, given the stages that we're after, finance teams that don't have bandwidth. So there's a big content component of what we're doing. We do things like this. We're starting to lean more towards doing webinars that provide some sort of teaching element behind them, and then partnerships. So we've been lucky to develop some partnerships with CFO firms, tax firms, and others that have clients that have this specific need. So it's those sort of things what we're really kind of focusing on in terms of go to market. But look, we're small, we're growing, we're kind of trying everything, and we're going heavy towards what we see works today. Yeah, that's what we've been doing.
Okay, yeah, appreciate that insight. And then on the capital side, we were talking before we hit record, maybe a little capital in the business, but tell us about your funding strategy right now. Have you raised capital? How are you thinking about bootstrapping versus raising?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, man. Oh man, we've gone back and forth so much on this. I mean, we raised a very little amount of money. It was from, a few VC funds, and we've been mostly bootstrapped since inception, deliberately so, really. We'd like to get to a stage where we think it would make sense for us to raise. We don't know exactly when that is, today, but we do see that there's a path where we'll raise some funds potentially soon. I just don't know exactly when. But bootstrapping is, obviously there's pros and cons, like to everything, right? If you raise a big amount of money, then you've got a different pressure. You've got now kind of a new boss, and you have to report things, and you have to show certain growth. And that requires, that creates so much pressure, or it can create so much pressure on how do you acquire customers? How fast do you acquire them? What retention rates? What's your CAC? Like, will you be able to support a model? All those things, right? Like the founders deal with, I know, and we didn't want to go down that path. So bootstrapping has its benefits, because you can tweak pricing strategies, you can tweak kind of your go-to-market, you can tweak the product the way you want it, but then you don't have this scale, right? It's just this thing, like you don't have the same scale or potential for scale, because you're lacking in that big capital that you can throw stuff at, the weighing act. But I think we've been doing it right. We have less pressure, I think, than heavily VC funded companies have, but anyway, that's how it is today. Not to say it's going to be different later.
And yeah, I was an in-house SaaS CFO, now fractional SaaS CFO, helping SaaS founders like yourself with their finances, scale. And one thing I always want to know is like, well, what's the goal of the business? So I'm curious if you want to share, like you've been doing this for a while, is it to operate for a long time, to scale it as big as you can, or do you want to reach a certain ARR level and then exit, or maybe get some growth equity? Any thoughts about long-term plans with the business as a founder?
Yeah. It's honestly, it's not binary. Like, on any given day or any given month when we're having a discussion about how we're selling, how our customers are feeling.
Yeah, yeah, but it could be 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, or different for each founder I
Right.
experience. So, and we were talking earlier, and it's in my opinion, it seems like what I call the subscription management space. So, like revenue management, invoicing, renewal management is heating up, and talking to a lot of new players in the space are recently new and funded. And I feel like this is now just like FP&A. FP&A was super hot, and according to my numbers at my SaaS do site, like $1 billion of capital went into FP&A solutions, and some got acquired. Still an interesting space, but now I feel like I'm getting the same thing on subscription management. People reaching out, hey, I've got a new product. Look at my product. So I'm curious where because you've been doing this for a while now in subscription management. So what I'm curious, like, do you see any changes now? Where do you see this space going? Just curious, your take on this category now.
It's yeah, it's interesting, and you're absolutely right. I mean, FP&A, there's so many dollars that went into FP&A. There were so many there still are so many options, and it's really hard to differentiate between I don't know how many there are out there, but the 20 or the 50 or whatever it is. It's hard. And each one, has their kind of stake in terms of why they think they're different. So let me see if I can answer your question. I mean, the way we see ourselves is, we are very focused on a specific set of problems that are faced by companies in the stage that I mentioned. And a lot of it starts with, with the data that, at least that we see people come to us with this problem. The data is not clean. They've got data in their CRM that is trusted by some, not trusted by others. You've got data that's in an accounting system. Generally, it's mostly trusted by people. Or you have it in spreadsheets, which is really, it's kind of not trusted by anybody other than the owner of the spreadsheet. And I don't think, for us, we're trying to solve this problem, getting data clean. And I think getting data clean, getting it into a system accurately, getting it so everyone can trust it, and solving that problem is really, really hard. It's hard. And I think, given my background and how deep into the weeds I've been, I understand why it's so hard. And I think the companies, I don't think this is a single winner market. I think there's going to be multiple winners in this market. But it's those who can use the technology today, AI, whatever, to get that data clean and get it into a system so it can be usable and easily usable as fast as possible. I think those are going to be some competitive advantages as we see this. Anyway, I'll pause there, but that's what we see.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you have kind of what I call like holistic subscription management. So invoicing, rev rec, billings, renewal management, just that holistic, so we can manage that whole revenue cycle of SaaS. And then also outside of it, like kind of ancillary, is just seeing also just a lot of invoicing solutions pop up. Who are just focused on invoicing maybe for a certain vertical, but maybe not that holistic management of the whole revenue cycle. So I think it will be interesting to see how this plays out. I think there can only be so many invoicing solutions out there. And maybe you would build a big business, but maybe not something that's going to reach 100 million ARR just because there's so much competition. And, it's interesting, some of these categories, I still think this space is wide open, according to my survey, but some categories like cap table management, Carta dominates. 40% market share at least. I was compiling numbers last night, and you have then people not using cap table management, and then you have a whole host of solutions who have 1% market share. But then other industry, categories like this just wide open. So still a ton of market share.
Yeah. And I'm just going to go back to, at least what we've discovered in the time that we've been doing this. I really believe, knowing, from my audit days, I mean, I completely understand the procure to pay cycle. I understand the payroll kind of cycle. There's cash reconciliation cycle. And then this is order to cash. That's essentially what it's from an accounting standpoint. It's managing customers' orders all the way until you see cash and all of the things that are happening in between. But to echo a little bit, there's so many point solutions that do one element of these things, and try to tie them together is the reason it's so hard. I mean, just think about, like, if you have a contract, you have there's the value of a contract. Then you have, well, which one of these things within this contract are being billed in the first year versus the second year versus third year? What happens if there's an early termination? You've got credits to deal with. What happens if salespeople give the discount on one product in 1 year and a different discount? And then, so just tracking all of those things. And then one product might be taxable. So now you've got to integrate a tax solution in, and you've got just all these moving parts. And then somebody wants ARR out of all of that. Hey, well, what's my ARR out of that? Well, a solution has to get it right, but then CFO A is calculating their ARR using a certain methodology, and CFO B is calculating their ARR, and now they want it out of your solution. So how do you do that? That's why it's so difficult.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just calculating ARR and the definition of ARR. And we know now that's so getting more difficult in the SaaS space. So Ali, curious at this stage of your business, if you have a favorite number or metric or metrics that you're focused on to guide the business.
For us, it's kind of an easy one. It's such an important one. I mean, we're B2B SaaS. We sell to B2B SaaS. So for us, it's ARR. It's our favorite metric. It's the metric that we track very, very closely, and then the change of ARR, right? So that retention numbers around ARR movement. It's by far for us the most important number, and I think by far for almost every single one of our customers that we do.
Yeah. So you're kind of, aligned there. Yeah. ARR, obviously popular answer. You want to grow ARR, helps the valuation, the more ARR, and plus your clients that you're helping out. So Ali, as we wrap up here, tell us what's coming up next for TrueRev.
For us, I mean, we sort of touched on it. It's just, it's for us, it's about growth now. We want to have smart, deliberate growth. It's a little bit different than the VC model, which is grow, break things like grow at all costs. But for us, it's being smart, it's being deliberate, it's growing with the right customer base, it's tracking our retention metrics, but it comes down really just to the word of growth for us.
Okay. Yeah. Growth is good. So, and they, like you said, balanced growth. So Ali, appreciate your time today and sharing your journey. If listeners would like to learn more about TrueRev, where should we send them online?
Yeah, just go to TrueRev.com. It's an easy one. You can find us on LinkedIn. We're pretty active there. So you can connect with us on LinkedIn. And then if you want to email us directly, just hit us up, growth@TrueRev.com. Yeah.
Perfect. So check out TrueRev.com to learn more. And again, Ali, appreciate your time and sharing your journey today.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thanks.